Okay, welcome to Mr. YouTube's Board Game University once again. Excuse me. Today we're going to be talking about Kutná Hora, the City of Silver, which is uh, the next in my sort of like capitalist fantasy series, where we kind of talk about, how games like end up often being like LARPing, capitalist LARP, and live action role playing for those who don't know the acronym. And first video in this series was kind of about pipeline, and now we're going to be talking about Kutná Hora because I think Kutná Hora and games like it represent sort of the next step in the economic fantasy, which is kind of total market control or protected markets. I don't know exactly the term to. It's funny because in spite of it being a exploitation fantasy, it actually, like, in order to work, it requires a planned economy, which is an idea from socialism. So, all right, let's get into it. So the idea behind this game, um, it's very well done. I think it may be. I picked it because I think it's the best of the sort of planned economy Euros, beyond maybe On Mars. But this one has a more, hard line. It's a bit more restrictive in the way that it lets you do things. So I think it kind of fits the bill a little bit better. So what you have here is you have a map of Kutná Hora, which is a city in the Czech Republic. Um, I think this game is set in like the 1300s or something. Kutná Hora was a city where a bunch of silver was mined. And as is the case with most games about this kind of thing, they're like, it was great. Everybody made money. I'm guessing that, um, you know, kings and stuff made money off the silver mining and peasants did the mining. But we're in a fantasy world here, so let's go with it. We're all like, I guess, 13th century industrialists, where we are going to mine and develop the town up here. Mining takes place down here. One of my, one of the features that I enjoy about this game is that the town itself, it takes a sort of like bird's eye view of the town. So there's like little buildings that you'll build here. And then the mine itself is actually like a side view. So you're digging down like through mine shafts. So what you're going to do is you're going to build buildings, which are going to develop the town. You're going to mine for coal in the town. And you're going to, over here, try to maximize scoring potential off of a sort of collective scoring mechanism. Now, the big feature of Kutná Hora, so let's actually go to my PowerPoint. All right, so we've got to turn off our board cam. All right, here we go. Okay, Kutná Hora, the City of Silver. I would love to say these designers' names, but I'm sure I would butcher them. I encourage you to head to BGG and, read more about them. Okay, so once again, we're doing our capitalism thing here. A little refresher from the last episode. So capitalism, it's a organizational system for forms of production. It's designed to maximize the exploitation of those forms of production. So you have capital, which is, trucks, rocks, money, things like that. You have labor, which is the thing that produces, which is in my conception is the source of everything. You don't get any of these other forms of production without labor. But here's our little spaceman. You will recognize this from the previous episode. And we've got land, blobby. So this, Kutná Hora is part of the sort of like capitalist fantasy genre. We're back with round 2 and 3 and 4 soon to come. But Kutná Hora kind of represents a planned economy. So let's here. This is from the rule book. So I will show you on video here in a second. But let me turn myself off so you can see the full image here. Okay, so basically, there are these two kind of like, they're kind of computers, but basically according to the designers and the rulebook, commodity prices follow the rational principles of supply and demand. A lot going on there. We won't talk about that right now, but basically you have a population computer over here and you have a ore production computer over here. So when population increases, the prices will increase. And when you produce more ore prices will fall, but the cost of silver, refined ore, will increase, as well as permits to mine. Also, building buildings will adjust the computer. So I'll dive into this a little bit more, but basically what you have is a very I don't want to say simplistic because that sounds reductive, but it's a very basic supply and demand system. Like the more people there are, the more expensive goods become until you overproduce those goods, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so we're going to get out of here for now. Head back to the board. Okay, so the mechanism that you interact with Kutná Hora with, I need another sip on I think my allergies are back. But, okay, so what you do in this game is on your turn, you're going to play 2 cards. Each of the cards has 2 actions on it. You oriented in the direction of the action you're going to take. You take 2 of those per turn, and except for your 3rd turn where you just play 1. So the actions are very broadly, I'm not going to do too much rules grit here, but very broadly, you will be staking your claim on plots of land in Kutná Hora that you will later build on. You will also be buying plans and putting them into your planning area, plans for buildings, and then you will build those buildings on the plots themselves. And that, 3-part process, which culminates in the building of the building, is ultimately what causes the economy to change. The first 2 things do not actually change anything in the economy. This is, going back to sort of like what a planned economy is basically the rules structure of this game is designed in such a way where the economy can never go off the rails. In fact, if you go on Board Game Geek, there is a spreadsheet that you can print, and I have printed for people when we play this game, that outlines all of the potential prices that can happen in the game. So the idea here is that the only way this economy works is through restricting player choice, and I'll explain a little bit more about how that works in detail. So. And I guess a few other things, like you'll be building the church and, what else can you do? Taking an income action to get more money. Broadly speaking, that's most of what you're going to be doing in the game. But the most interesting part and what makes this game really cool is the economy. So I'm going to spend most of the time talking about that. So let's look here. We've got... So just through, we'll go through kind of the process of how this would work. So at the beginning of the game, here's one of our computers. I've actually upgraded my computers with these like cheapo Etsy things that are 3D printed. The game comes with cardboard ones. But what you do is the way that pricing works is you only have one resource in this game, and that's money. So, but there are 6 types of goods. Whenever you want to buy a good, you either you determine its price by using these little computer calculator things. So, for example, if I needed to use building materials, which is I've blown it up. So, building materials, which is this top one here, it's a little hard to see. So, let's say I needed 4 building materials. The price is currently 2, so I multiply 4 by 2 and I get 8 money. So that would be the cost for 4 building materials currently. Let's say I'm building, let's see if I can hold this up here. Let's say I'm building this sawmill. All of the buildings require building materials. There's another feature of this game. So I mentioned how it's built around restricting player choices. So you'll notice Those 3 on the end there, those are a different thing, which we'll come back to. But the 6 here that are kind of like gray, pink, yellow, blue, black, and brown. Those are the 6 types of buildings. Now, as a player in this game, at the beginning, you do a kind of draft, and you only get to select. You'll get a pre-portioned chunk of 3, and you'll get to order them because the order that they go on your board matters. But what this is saying is, like, for the green player here, they can only ever build silver, building materials, and or production buildings. Those are the only buildings that they can build. Everyone can interact with the mine, but only every player is going to have, based on your player count, every player, I've set this up for 4 players, so this is not totally accurate because I've only got 2 showing here, but every player is only going to be able to build these 3 types of buildings. And that's an example of just like, here's how the planned economy works, is you were born to be Mr. Builder. You cannot do anything other than what Mr. Builder is allowed to do. You can't go and interfere with somebody else's thing. And the reason for that is if you did, the entire economy would break, which interpret that how you will. So here's our, let's say somebody wanted to build this sawmill. We've decided that it costs 8 here because that's the starting price. Now the thing about building this will be, you'll need a plot, but you'll put it out here, it'll get built. But what this one does is it causes a card to cycle. So you go like this, card cycles. That actually happens second, but the order isn't super important here. This player will get 3 on their build track. So it lines up on this track here. Oops, I knocked it over. And in addition, whenever you build a building, it causes this arrow to move. And this is like part of the simple supply and demand here. This is saying other players can't build this type of building until we get more demand for it. And building materials are super duper 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 cheap. So 1 is very, very cheap in this game. So if the builder player did this, that's going to encourage everybody to build very quickly. And, I mentioned that this game has like a planned economy, but it is very cool because it contains all these built-in incentives. So by builder player doing this, they've suddenly made building materials really, really cheap. So everybody's going to build as quickly as they can. And in the process of doing that, that will cause the population to grow, which over time will increase the prices. And so you've got this sort of dynamic economy going where you're kind of just, these little card things are not working as great as I would like them to, mainly because of my kind of shoddy camera work here. Anyway, you get how it works. So you'll be building these buildings, dynamically changing the economy. The interesting thing is everybody's going to also be building here in the mine. They're going to be building these mine tiles, tunneling into the earth. And because everybody has access to this, everybody has the capacity to basically tank the price of ore, which is interesting. And that in turn makes silver very good. So if you are a silver player, you kind of want to watch how this building is going so you can exploit at the right time. Because the way the income action works is you just take an action and you get income from all of the little things on your player board. So going back to our previous example, let's say, building materials were at 3. This player takes their income. They've got 3 building material production, so they would get $9. And you just kind of push and pull like that, building various buildings. The way there's a whole bunch of puzzle here that I'm not kind of going over, which is, the way that buildings are built in the town. You build them next to certain symbols that maximizes points. You have these community buildings that you build that also create point scoring opportunities. There's various things that you do. There's kind of shared incentives for these little like senator people that you put into the town council that score points for doing various things in the game. But overall, the game is trying to maximize and predict what other players are going to do with the economy. And overall, I think this is maybe like one of the better examples of this. It's a very like enjoyable game. And I think it could stand for, I think it could stand to be a little bit more off the rails than it is. But once again, when I talk about like capitalist fantasies, like I view all games as having politics, and art always inevitably has politics. And the lack of statement about, an economic system, or saying the quiet part loud or saying the loud part quiet, if you will, often says a lot about what the politics of, gaming as a whole might be. And, the sort of like, it's always capitalist fantasies are interesting me for an endless amount of reasons, but this one in particular is, it goes to great lengths to stabilize an economy, to regulate and control an economy. And there's nothing more fantastical than that. Because if you live in our world, if you live in America in 2025 like I do, like nothing could be farther than the truth of a regulated and stabilized economy. I'm a serf. The wealthy discipline and control everyone's lives. Okay, sorry, I'm going off on a rant here. We'll dial it back. We'll come back to that later when I start getting into more exploitative games. But let's look at a few opinions here. So let's turn off board cam, PowerPoint. All right. So this is Ben Draper. I think he's got he's kind of making my point here. I think Ben's an interesting follow on BGG. I recommend him. It's disappointing that your industry niches are dictated at random at the beginning of the game rather than through emergent gameplay. This greatly limits player agency in finding and exploiting inefficiencies in the market. He's drawing attention to kind of what I just said, which is that the planned economy of this game makes it so you can't do what capitalism typically allows you to do. Interesting. The other annoying thing is the way the economy is tracked. It seems like every other action you have to flip some cards. You kind of saw there's a little bit of usability stuff here, but yeah, Ben wasn't stoked on it. All right, next up. We've got Philippe, I think he's Belgian, and he occasionally, I just included this because I think it kind of furthers my point about how a lot of folks think about games. He described it as a decent game, but it's important to know how the prices will evolve. So I recommend having the spreadsheet or using the companion app so that you can predict what will happen with the prices. So it's interesting how, it's, for games of exploitation, lots of times for them to seem or appear fair, you have to have a very good sense of how the exploitation in general is going to work. So interesting. So that's number 2, Kutná Hora. Give it a shot if you can find it. I think it's pretty widely available. It's a pretty interesting game. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.